Hey guys, and welcome back for our last episode of the 2-Minute Warning. I'm Blake Showalter.
And I'm Athletic Diaz.
And for today's episode, we're going to be recapping an amazing semester of SEMO sports, amazing 2 semesters of SEMO sports, Beto. And to do that, we brought on our Athletic Director, Brady Barke. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, starting off, I want to talk about how you got into being our Athletic Director. You've done an amazing job so far, obviously. But how did you get this role?
Yeah, it's I don't know how much time we got, but so I've actually been at the university since 2008. And I first came to the university to handle our NCAA rules compliance. And I spent some time doing that, about 5 years doing that. And then I actually I moved out of athletics, moved over into the president's office, and kind of served as essentially chief of staff for the president for a few years. And then the AD position opened kind of unexpectedly. President Vargas was, I think, on day 2 of his tenure as president. And he looked at me and said, "You have some background in athletics, right? And would you be willing to kind of do it on an interim basis?" And so I did for a little while, and then said, "I think it's time for us to open up a search." And actually kind of getting back into it, it kind of reignited my passion for athletics. And so I said, "Hey, I'm interested. I'm going to kind of put my name in the hat." And was fortunate enough to get it, and that was 2016. I was named permanently as the AD. So it's been a little bit now. I think actually I was the youngest AD in the Division I AD in the country at the time, and so it's a reminder now. It's been a little while, and I'm getting older. I'm certainly not that anymore, but it's been a good run thus far.
Well, we're certainly grateful that you became our AD. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before the show. 6 OVC championships so far this semester, or this year rather. And a historic year it's been. I mean, our men's basketball team going to March Madness for the first time in 23 years. I was there for that. Isaiah and I were there for that. It was awesome to see that. Hopefully we get to go back. But what's it like bringing our school to such a historic point in our school for the school year? What was that like?
Yeah, I think from an athletic standpoint, we take a lot of pride in it. In a sense, we kind of get to carry the flag, right? I mean, that's how people nationally get to learn about Southeast Missouri State, the region and the university. You think about all of the people that tune in and are watching those games and watch the first game of the NCAA tournament, and they get to learn about Southeast Missouri State, right? And there's a reason that Google searches of SEMO, have this huge spike on the days surrounding that, right? And so all these people are trying to learn about it. And so we take a lot of pride in the opportunity it provides to bring exposure and rally alums and just create pride for this region and this community. And so that's a big deal. So I'm certainly grateful we've had the opportunity to do it. Basketball is a different stage than anything else. But every one of our sports programs have had the opportunity to hoist a championship in the last few years, and that's a really cool thing.
Awesome. We've got one more question, then I'm going to let Beto step in here. But not only our basketball team's had success, our baseball team has been doing very well. 2 College World Series appearances in a row so far. Tennis team in the tournament right now. What has been, I guess, the formula, or even if there is a formula, what have you been able to do? What steps were you able to take to get us to where we are today?
Yeah, I think the thing I tell people is it all starts with people. You have to find good people that share the same values that you do, that, have kind of the same principles and believe in the same things that you believe in order to be able to try to go and change a culture and ultimately, change the outcomes of what's been before you. And I think we've been able to hit on that. I think, the staff that we have and I think the coaches that we have all kind of share those same values, that same vision, and are about the same things. And what's really been special is we've been able to retain all of them. So often at this level, you have, kind of low to mid-major Division I schools, they get some success, and all of a sudden everybody starts plucking them away, right? And we've been able to have people that are committed to being here, and we've been able to retain them, and then not just have that one-time success and then the coach goes on somewhere else. We've been able to kind of sustain that and have year-over-year success in these sports because, we're able to keep our coaching staff intact. And I think that's probably been the biggest piece of it.
And just a real quick follow-up question.
You said you were done.
I know. One more. I just talked about how you met Coach Corn. I think that's just a great story.
Yeah.
And if you mind just sharing how you met Coach Corn, that'd be great.
Yeah, so, Coach Corn and I actually, we both grew up in Illinois. I remember watching him play basketball in high school, but then he went to SIU Carbondale. He played at Carbondale, and then he was on their staff there. And I enrolled in law school at SIU and went and was working in the compliance office in their athletic department while I was in law school. And we played noon basketball every day. And it would be a lot of the staff get together and they play. And Coach Corn was one of those people, and he and I got to go kind of head-to-head every day for about a year and a half. And so that was one of those deals where we, we just got to know each other, and, we've kind of stayed in touch all along. And, the funny thing is he uses that as a teachable thing for his student athletes because, he's like, hey, just think if I was a jerk to him, this, just student who was, playing basketball, I'd never have the opportunity to have gotten a head coaching job because I never thought one day I might have to, apply for a job and work for him. And so it's kind of funny how things come full circle. But you just never know the people that you run into, how they may influence, your future career path, and relationships are important.
That's a crazy story about how you met Coach Corn, and obviously really good life lessons. And that, always be nice to those who you meet, and always try to hold yourself with the best of your ability. It kind of goes back to what you're talking about earlier with the values and everything like that you and the staff have. What would you say are some of the main values that you guys all share and carry along?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those things that just honesty, integrity, people that are committed to just doing things the right way, I think is an important thing for me. But, I think there are a lot of people that are, truly kind of family people. Some of them people who quite literally have families, but I think others that just like they care about more than just themselves, right? You get a lot of people that come and they're just focused on me. Hey, I'm looking for my success and what's next for me. But, it's crazy to me because we see, when we have send-offs for our teams that go to the conference tournament or go to the NCAA tournament, and you see other coaches and other teams and things show up to see them off, like that's a cool thing, right? Because it's more than just about them and what they're doing. They're there to support everybody, and they realize that, rising tides raise all ships, right? And so that's one of those things that when you look at, you want to know, hey, are these people selfless in the sense that this isn't just about them, right? It's about something bigger than them, and it's about a department and all of those things. And those things are really critical, I think, to being able to move an entire organization forward.
Just talking about balance, going back to talking about schools, I think that it's interesting whenever schools focus on one program entirely, like Gonzaga with basketball, or even Alabama, who notoriously has a super good football program. What do you think about that, and do you think that SEMO has a program like that, or do you think we're very well balanced across all sports?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as you're trying to build an athletics program, like if we were to not have one at all and we were going to look to start one, right? I think something like what Gonzaga has done is actually it's a really good model. As a kind of a low to mid-major program, being able to try to identify a program that you think you can be really good at and be able to invest in it and continue to try to build it, right? And they pick basketball because that's where the greatest return is in terms of revenue, right? And so as you think about mid-major schools that have been able to have success in basketball, it's historically those that don't have scholarship football. You look at Dayton, Butler, Wichita State, Gonzaga, a lot of those schools, that's what they've done, right? And so it's actually it's a pretty smart model. I think one of the challenges that schools have, though, is that people like us that have such a rich tradition with other sports, football, obviously we've had football for over 100 years, right? And there's such a good tradition with it that you want to continue to invest in those, and we've been able to have success in it, right? And so for people like us, that doesn't make sense to go away from all those other things and just try to invest in something like that. But I think that's why you've seen schools like that not at it. Wichita State had it at one time. They had football. They dropped it. They talked about bringing it back, and they decided, no, let's just kind of stay the course and let's do what we do. And so it really is. It's a good strategy. I think there are some of those sports where even as kind of mid-major funded programs, you can still have success. I think basketball is one of those. I think baseball is certainly one of those. We've seen some of that, right? College of Charleston and some of those that are College World Series kind of programs, but they're not necessarily Power 5 schools. And so, I think we have the opportunity to do that in a few of our sports. I mean, I think, we've seen Murray State and Belmont and others from a basketball standpoint be able to build successful programs, even funded at a mid-major level. Baseball is one of those that, could you take the next step and be able to win a regional and get to a super regional? I mean, we've seen Tennessee Tech do that in the OVC. So I think there are some of those programs where, as we have had success, we can continue to try to build those. And I think that's really what you start trying to figure out is where do you have the opportunity? Where have you not reached your ceiling yet? And I think it's different for everybody, right? Some are positioned better than others based on different sports. And so we've had the benefit of being successful across all of our sports recently. But I think that's what you're going to have to do is figure out, how do you take the next step, and you've got to decide which ones give you the best opportunity.
Gotcha. I don't want to use the word easiest, obviously, but as far as doable goes, do you think basketball and baseball, because of how the tournament layout is, do you think that's the most doable for a smaller D1 school, mid-sized D1 school like us, to go far? I mean, I hear about schools like Coastal Carolina who won it all one year. I didn't even hear about Coastal Carolina at all before then. So do you think, as far as investing in a program goes, do you think baseball and basketball are the most doable, being that football right now it's a 4-team layout for the playoffs? And also we're FCS school, obviously. But
yeah, I mean, I think basketball and baseball and yeah, you mentioned Coastal Carolina. I said College of Charleston, Coastal Carolina. I think those are the things where you've got an opportunity to be able to. The margins aren't as great, right? So you've got really good Friday night starters in baseball. You've got a really good pitcher inside the circle in softball. There are some sports where a couple of players can make a difference, right? But you look at something like football, and granted, you're talking FCS versus FBS sometimes as you're talking about, differences in football. But just the size, as you start dealing with lines, offensive and defensive lines and just depth and talent, that's where you start to show the disparities, right? And so I think it is possible to get a couple of key players and be all of a sudden able to make a huge step. And I mean, again, Ja's a once in a lifetime type of person, but Ja Morant to Murray State completely changes Murray State, right? And so can you do some of those things? You don't necessarily have to take your investment from, $1 million a year to $10 million a year for that program in order to get better, right? You need to find a couple of difference makers. And I think that's where there's still opportunities in sports like that on both the men's and the women's side. I think where there are some sports, softball is one of those on the women's side that I think you've got an opportunity to be able to become nationally relevant and not have a crazy investment, involved in it. So, there's definitely opportunities there, but it gets harder and harder to get to the point where you can compete to win the national championship, but you can at least become a national, kind of presence. Yeah. And you're talking about top 25 type, programs that have an opportunity to at least make some noise.
And real quick, you bring up Murray State. Just to kind of ask about that, do you think it's a smart move, or do you see us being in the OVC for a long time, or moving out of the OVC conference into a more higher-level conference? Or do you think as of right now or in the future we should just remain in the OVC, keep on doing what we're doing? Or, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question, one that I got a lot, over the last couple of years as we've had so much realignment. And I think everybody makes their moves for different reasons. Each institution is making a decision for a particular reason. But I think, for us, we're where we need to be. The schools that are in the OVC are similarly resourced to us. They're similar types of institutions to us. And we need to focus on becoming the best version of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? And so we've demonstrated that, hey, if we can focus on the things that we think make us successful, we can have success. And so I think that's what we have to do. And if at the end of the day, the time comes where you're now in a different place and you want to try to be able to, move to the next level, so to speak, then you can do that. But I think for right now, definitely in the foreseeable future, I think the OVC is where we need to be. I think there's a pretty big resource gap between us and even like the Missouri Valley that Murray, went into. And so I think that's what, that's kind of what we have to consider is what are we really in a position to do? Do we want to be somewhere where we can be successful and can like institutions? Or do you want to just say that you're in a particular conference to say you're in a conference, but you're not necessarily resourced and positioned to be able to compete and be successful?
Absolutely.
So I think for the time being, we're certainly where we need to be.
No, that makes perfect sense.
I got you. Just looking at what we were talking about earlier with the OVC championships. We've won 6 this year and so many more last year. Do you have a favorite memory in like winning, or just as a favorite memory as an athletic director as a whole?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I don't know. They're all pretty special because I think we've had so many that programs. I mean, you talk about tennis earlier. We were talking about them, and to think of how really bad that program was in terms of its success and to what they've been able to do. Well, the first time they win a championship's a really special thing, right? First time in school history kind of thing. But obviously basketball hits a little bit differently for me because we had to make a tough coaching change and bring somebody in and do something that hasn't been done in so long. I think it feels a little bit different because of the way that everything has transpired in that one. So that's a special moment, and of course the dramatic nature in which it was done, and that you thought you had it won, then you thought you lost it, and then you win it again, and that type of thing. But really my excitement comes from watching the celebration from the student athletes and the coaches because they put in so much time and energy into it, and that's the cool part, is to be able to see them be successful.
We were celebrating too. I was at Chris Harris's post-game press conference when we lost in the first round of March Madness. But one thing that I really liked that he said was at the beginning of the year, not a lot of people at the Show Me Center. As we won, started carrying momentum, place was filling up a lot. So what is that like? Just more people coming out, supporting these teams as we have more success?
Yeah, that's part of what we try to do, right? We want people to be proud of what we have and, the way we go about it and to get to know these people because, Chris Harris is one of these people that, the way he's matured during his time and what he's about. I'll tell you this, story just tells you what kind of people we have. So I've got a nephew that brought his, fourth grade basketball team down for a tournament, and they came to one of our games on a Saturday, and we win. It was a double overtime game. We win. They come down on the court afterwards, and you've got Chris Harris and Philip Russell and some of these guys that are down there talking to them, taking pictures and all this stuff. And one of these kids, says, "Hey, we've got a game tomorrow at the Sportsplex. You come out and watch our game." And he didn't know who they were. He didn't know that one of them was related to me or, anything like that. Lo and behold, he goes and shows up for their game the next day at the Sportsplex, right? You don't have to do that, right? Unless you're just a good person.
That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of things that nobody sees, that, when you get to be on the inside, you get to see them and realize that, hey, we have just some really good people here. And to see them kind of grow and develop and mature through the process is a neat thing. It's really using sport to help develop young people.
I feel like that goes with your values as well when trying to bring people on. So I like to hear that a lot. One kind of a tough segue, but I just want to talk about it a little bit. We talk about wanting to have people stay here and build this program. What's it like with the transfer portal being kind of a new thing, losing guys like Phil Russell, of course. Obviously, would love to keep him, but also having guys stay like Geno Hess. So what do you think of the transfer portal? What are your kind of thoughts on that? How does it impact us as a smaller D1 school and just sort of that whole deal?
Yeah, I think transfer portal's a tough thing because, the days of having, 4-year, student athletes that come in as freshmen and stay, especially in quote-unquote revenue-generating sports, I think those are harder and harder for schools our size. It's harder for us to retain them and to keep them. It makes our coaches have to work harder at the start in terms of making sure they find people that want to be here for the right reasons, right? If you're coming here and you're motivated by, well, what kind of scholarship am I getting and how much money's coming in my pocket and what NIL opportunities are there and all this other stuff, right? Chances are, as soon as you start to experience success, you're going to find yourself looking for somewhere else to go. And so you have to find the right people. And that's why, like you mentioned, Gino's still here because Gino loves this place, right? And he appreciates everything that Coach Took and that the university and others have done for him here. And he wants to be part of something special here. And as a result, he's going to go down as, he already is, right? He's the best ever to play here in terms of statistically, right?
Has another season to make it even a
Right.
larger gap. Yeah.
And so, those kind of people are really cool. But then on the flip side, some of those that you lose that way, they really hurt. And it's not that you can blame them, right? They're doing what they think is best for them and trying to improve their own personal situations and all of that. And so, the transfer portal kind of is what it is. I think you hope that you can break even in it and that you get some people that leave another institution and might come to yours because the other place wasn't a good fit and this is. And you're going to lose some for the same reason. And so I think that's the hope, is that you find a way to break even. But it's harder and harder as you think about trying to bring people in as freshmen, develop them in hopes that they're going to be really good later on, because you may never get to see those years where they're really good later on because they may end up somewhere else. So it's a tough thing. I hope that they can still tweak it a little bit and get it better because, right now I think the transfer rules still aren't quite right.
Yeah.
But it's here to stay.
And then to piggyback on that, because this thing impacts the transfer portal a lot if guys want to stay or leave, and that's NIL deals. They already knew right now it's kind of harder with a smaller city like Cape, who doesn't really have a lot of sponsorship opportunities around the program and stuff like that. Yeah. So how do you think NIL deals plays effect on our schools like this, and do you think they're going to have change in the future? Do you think they're going to remain the same? Do you think they're going to get out of hand, or do you like them?
Yeah. That's another thing that, the NIL space, what people see in the media really probably only reflects 1 or 2% of what's actually happening, right? They're seeing these major deals. I think we've talked before about these multi-million-dollar NIL deals. That's not the norm, right? Most of these people are talking about, maybe if they're really good, maybe you're talking about $10,000 or $25,000 or something like that, and that's in some of these revenue, type sports too. So it's not as much as what people are kind of talking about. But I think the challenge is that all of that money is coming from donors, right, who were otherwise supporting the programs. And so my concern is that money that used to maybe be coming to the program is now going into the pockets of the student athletes. Now the universities aren't able to support the things that they've been supporting the same way because they've lost some of their money. And now the losers in that are these sports that don't generate the dollars, right? And so now do you find yourself losing opportunities for, tennis, golf, volleyball, soccer student athletes, where they're not the ones that are generating all these opportunities, and now their funding suffers because there's not as much money coming into the university itself because it's going to the students. And that's what I'm afraid of is going to happen. And so take all the shady recruiting stuff out of it that, of course, I hope is going to get fixed. But, I just am concerned that we lose opportunities for people to play sport. And that's what I don't want to see happen. But there are some good things to it. It opened up some doors for people to do things that they couldn't otherwise do. You could now run a camp if you wanted to and have your name on it. You couldn't do that before. There are things that you can do that are good things, and it's part of a good rule change. But they've got to find some balance, and it's going to happen federally in order for it to create an even playing field. They can't do it state by state.
And just to close things out, a couple more questions. I know you wanted to ask about a couple of things, so go ahead.
Yeah. So going back to the adding and subtracting of the programs like we were talking about, the most profitable and everything like that, is there a future where you see SEMO getting more programs such as like men's soccer, men's wrestling, and stuff like that? And what would it take in order for us to get those programs?
I come from a wrestling background, so I'm very interested to hear about
I
that.
come from a soccer background.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, good questions and ones that I get a lot. You can throw golf in in there. That's one of those others that we get a lot. We actually used to have men's golf. We, had to drop it a while back. I think we always go through, we try to survey the interests of the students to be able to figure out, what we think we have an interest and ability to be able to do. But there's some other stuff that goes into it, from a Title IX perspective, making sure that the participation opportunities we're providing mirror kind of the student population. And we're actually we're heavily female in terms of a student population. You guys may know that. I don't know. But we're heavily female in terms of our population. But we're actually heavier on the male side in terms of our student-athlete population. And so there are actually probably some women's programs that we've kind of continued to keep an eye on, interests in particular, to see if those are ones that, may be future sports to potentially add. But I really want to make sure that if we do that we're in a position to be able to fund them appropriately and it not be at the expense of the ones we're already providing. And so I don't know that we'll do something right away, but it's always something we'll keep an eye on.
Well, I don't want to throw my bias too much, but women's wrestling it's blowing up a little bit.
I know it is. It is.
Yeah, I won't get into it too hard. But closing out, what is your vision for the future for SEMO, for SEMO athletics?
Yeah, I think, for me, I'd like to think that we haven't reached our ceiling. We have won, 24 championships across all of our sports in the last 4 years. Every one of our student athletes that came in as a freshman in 2019 that'll graduate here this spring, every single one of them won a championship.
That's amazing.
Every sport. It's like that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And so, that's what we want to be able to do. We want them to have a positive experience, get to compete at a high level, have success doing it, earn their degree, and, be prepared for whatever the next chapter is in their lives, right? Like that's kind of our mission of what we're trying to accomplish. But at some point we have to figure out, where do we go next, right? Is it, hey, we're just content continuing to win conference championships and saying we got to go to the NCAA tournament? Or, as we were talking about earlier, do we want to have a chance to be able to win a regional in baseball or softball? Do we want to have a chance to be a national seed and host FCS playoff games? And, do we want to be able to win some games in the NCAA tournament and make a run and say, that made it to a Sweet 16 or, something like that? I think that's ultimately what we have to be able to figure out is, how do we position ourselves to be able to compete like that? And I think Division I athletics is changing. Some of the requirements and the expectations for membership are changing. And so the price tag, in a sense, is probably going to change too. And so we're going to have to evaluate that at the same time and figure out, are we in a position to be able to invest? And if so, what do we invest in? And so we've got a lot of work to do. It's not going to be easy. But, it's been a pretty good ride so far, and we're certainly proud collectively of what we've been able to accomplish, both, athletically, but also academically and the way our student athletes, perform in the classroom too.
That's awesome. You have anything else you want to add?
I'm all good here.
Well, I think that's a great way to end things off. Thank you so much for coming on today. Hey, guys, it's the next day, actually kind of later in the week, if you can't tell by the change of clothes and Beto's facial hair we got going on here. But real quick, I wanted to go back and just say thank you so much for turning in this semester. We have a lot planned for next semester. Not going to say too much yet, but we're really excited about it.
Yeah, once again, we want to say thank you to Brady Barke for the interview. Just fantastic stuff from him, really good interviewee. And congratulations on the promotion, now Vice President of Intercollegiate Athletics at SEMO. That is a big step up.
Amazing stuff, and he definitely deserves it. But that's all we have for this semester. We're going to be back next semester, of course. I'm Blake Showalter.
And I'm Beto Vacadillas.
And make sure to be updated with us. Follow us at the 2 Minute Warning _ on it on Instagram. Follow us at the Southeast Arrow on all platforms wherever you can. Subscribe down below so you get that notification immediately when we post again next semester. Thank you guys again. See you next semester.